Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm Mike Nozzolio, and it's my honor to be here tonight. Thank you, Judge. Those of you who were discussing graduating from Cornell, well, I have an undergraduate degree from Cornell, a master's degree from Cornell in resource economics, and in spite of that, I was elected to serve in the New York State Senate, representing this great community. Thank you, Commissioner Sayre, and all members of the Public Service Commission staff for being here tonight. My special thanks, and echo the comments to thank Chris Petagrasso and the staff of the Lansing High School and Great Middle School for moving mountains to ensure that this hearing be held in Lansing. Dozens of times I've gone on record to oppose the draft hydrofracking regulations of the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation because I believe they do not adequately protect the Finger Lakes region. But let's make it very clear. Let's make it very clear. This hearing tonight is not about hydrofracking of gas in New York State. Converting the Cayuga plant has nothing to do with fracking. Pat Pryor, who represents, I hope that those catcalls in the middle of my comments would be minimized, as I would respectfully ask that everyone give every member testifying today that respect. County Legislator Pat Pryor, who represents Lansing, in her past remarks, highlighted the fact that the gas supplied to the repowered plant would be from the interstate pipeline. Well, Pat was right then, she's right now, and that the bottom line is that a repowered Cayuga plant would not require and would not benefit from fracking projects in New York State. We're here today because the PSC has to consider a wide range of issues in deciding whether the Cayuga plant or other energy generators in this state should be repowered, should be sited, that the impact that they need to analyze is what would the impact be of repowering the Cayuga plant on the economy. This was a change in the law that took place this year. What the economic impact is of permanent jobs, of temporary jobs, of economic development, of local tax revenue, and electric market competitiveness. That is in the statute enacted just a few months ago. So I thank the PSC for being here. Now, let's talk about Lansing. It's very important that the members are here tonight to hear about the most important issue facing the citizens of Lansing. They'll be impacted by this decision. A variety of people. Those school children who deserve a quality education. The senior citizens in Lansing struggling on fixed incomes who are already having difficulty making ends meet to buy their groceries and pay their taxes. On my walk down the aisle tonight, I met one of those senior citizens, someone who I had known for many years, who I asked him how long he spent his life in Lansing. He said his entire life. And he wants to continue spending the rest of his life in Lansing, but he's here tonight because he's concerned that he's not going to be able to afford the property taxes in Lansing if this plant is not repowered. And the mothers and fathers who need to keep their jobs to support their families. There are firemen, volunteer firemen from Lansing who want to be able to continue to protect their communities. There tonight are teachers and educators in the Lansing School District who devote their whole careers to helping students. There are job seekers from Lansing and the entire Finger Lakes region who are hopeful they may have opportunities to work on the very significant job-producing construction projects that are being proposed. Leaders of the Tompkins County Chamber of Commerce who represent small business, those small business owners in Lansing, as well as economic developers from Tompkins County and the Town of Lansing Economic Development Committee are fighting every day to grow jobs, and they are concerned about the future of Lansing without a repowered Cayuga plant. Even members of the Lansing High School football team, they came here tonight because they're concerned about whether or not the school district in Lansing will be able to continue sports programs. And there were a number of other students here tonight who were helping because they're concerned with a continuation of extracurricular activities within their school. Those children are what this issue is all about. Commissioner Sayre, members of the panel, they all need to be listened to tonight. They all have the common bond of living in Lansing, loving Lansing, and caring about Lansing's future. They also share a collective concern that the loss of the Cayuga Power Plant would have a devastating economic impact on this community. We all fear those eventualities. We are filled with concerns, and those concerns are real. It was put up on the screen today, but I want you to have that indelibly marked on your brain when you leave this room tonight and you realize that if that plant is not repowered, there will be an 11% tax increase immediately to the average Lansing taxpayer. Your taxes are going to skyrocket. The increases of 11.7% in our school taxes, town taxes, at least by 7.4%. That's if you own the average house in Lansing. If it's above the average, it will be, of course, more, at least an average of a $600 tax hike to every Lansing property taxpayer, on top of other burdens that you already bear. The jobs that will be lost, the 40 that exist now at the Cayuga Power Plant, the potential to gain another 50. That's 90 high-tech jobs that would be gone if this plant is not repowered. Hundreds and hundreds of construction jobs if this plant is not repowered. And let's talk for a second about energy dependence. The power produced out of state. This further impedes job growth. By repowering the Cayuga plant, our region becomes increasingly dependent, if it's not repowered, on energy produced in other places, other states, possibly other countries. They're not going to be producing that power under the high environmental standards of New York, that I believe certainly for these reasons, and these reasons alone are enough. The local economy, the devastation of the tax rate, the situation of the schools. I believe, frankly, the proposal that put forward to also explore additional renewable energy alternatives is real, is genuine, is feasible, and can be nurtured, and it should be nurtured. And the proposal that made by those wanting to repower Cayuga certainly better be complied with over the long term on that endeavor. Governor Cuomo has established an energy highway blueprint focusing on alternatives to transmission system upgrades, accelerating the modernization of those plants that are producing electricity in New York. And that is a very important objective. Regarding NYSEG's proposal, I think some of the questions that were asked were certainly very relevant. Who's going to pay for those improvements? Where are they going to be made? How are the ratepayers going to fund this? And what will the costs be? But one thing I was concerned about, everyone else that asked questions were concerned about redacting. One thing it wasn't redacted because it just wasn't there. In the entire 21-page proposal by NYSEG, to the Public Service Commission, a mere 2 paragraphs were devoted to the topic of the economic impact the NYSEG proposal would have on Lansing and the entire Finger Lakes region. 21 pages, 2 paragraphs. That 2-paragraph analysis is inadequate and far from the thorough analysis that the Public Service Commission required. And some residents of Lansing are very concerned that NYSEG may have purposely chosen to ignore the PSC's directive because that directive also asked to analyze the economic impact to the town residents of Lansing. Where will that power come from? Well, 300 megawatts. If Cayuga isn't repowered, how do we replace it? Certainly becoming more dependent on power that has a much greater carbon footprint is something that should give everyone concern. Just last week, we had a very hot and humid week, 2 weeks ago. It was extremely hot, it was extremely humid. On that day of July 22nd, New York successfully met a new record peak demand for electricity thanks to the excellent performance by its participants, most notably as part the Cayuga plant. The Cayuga plant is one of the only remaining generating facilities located in the central part of New York State, and it provides critical support for our local system and the bulk system. Shutting down this plant jeopardizes the reliability of the entire energy generating system in New York State. The 300 megawatts of electric power generated locally by the Cayuga plant provide electricity to approximately 350,000 homes. And stated another way, that's 350,000 families. That number is far greater than the combined populations of Tompkins, Chemung, Seneca, Cayuga, and Tioga counties. To eliminate this source of generating power would put our region's people and businesses at risk. Just think what it was like 2 weeks ago. And just think of the stress and the health concerns and the safety consequences for the elderly and the sick that would benefit from brownouts or loss of service. I don't understand NYSEG's position regarding additional generation of power. There are several projects that are currently being delayed in the region I serve, and one is further housing growth and development in the town of Lansing itself that would enhance the tax base. There's another project, we mentioned Auburn, there's another project in Auburn that my office is involved with. NYSEG has been very helpful in listening, but the fact of the matter is they're hamstrung by the fact that there's not enough power being generated in our state. We need to keep up demand. Is this going to be a growth state or a state that's going to continue to shrink? We can't be a growth state without power, without electricity, because I dare say anyone in this room, regardless of what side you're on, regardless of how you believe, regardless of what questions you have, will use electricity, a lot of it, before you go home tonight, when you get home tonight, and when you get up tomorrow. Last but not least, the New York State Energy Highway, if it's to continue, it has to upgrade that highway. If we fail to promote the continued development of electric production, in our region particularly, this energy highway is going to be reduced to little more than a footbridge to nowhere. Lastly, in conclusion, repowering the Cayuga plant will prevent devastating tax increases on Lansing homeowners and area businesses. Repowering the Cayuga plant prevents significantly reduced services for Lansing residents, as well as prevent devastating losses on the Lansing School District, including the loss of critical teaching positions, fewer class offerings, larger class sizes, and the possible elimination of sports and other extracurricular activities. When you repower the Cayuga plant, you ensure that Lansing's largest single taxpayer will continue to pay taxes, and the average Lansing property taxpayer will not have to suffer seeing their tax bills increase by $600 or more. The repowering of the Cayuga plant prevents the Lansing School District from becoming the highest taxed non-city school district in Tompkins County. Massive tax hikes, critically important school funds, children not receiving the education they need and deserve, deep and painful cuts in essential town and county services, private sector job losses, higher electricity bills, reliance on out-of-state power. These are very real consequences important consequences, and most important consequences to the citizens of Lansing. It's those citizens that we want to see have hope and prosperity, as well as the entire Finger Lakes region. Respectfully, repower the Cayuga plant.
Thank you, Senator. Our next speaker is Senator Tom Omar. All right, then we will hear from Assemblywoman Barbara Lifton.